Good evening. Thank you. Thanks for being here tonight. Welcome to our last session of our water education series. I know it's a busy time of year, so I appreciate that you all have made it out tonight. My name is Michelle Bird. I am the Public Affairs Director for Larimer County. So for tonight, I'm just really your facilitator. I'm going to hand the mic around, make sure everyone stays on time, that sort of thing, help with IT if I need it. But I wanted really quickly, if you guys need to use the restroom, they're probably back where you, hi everyone, welcome. Come on in, take a seat. They're back probably where you came in the doors by that parking lot out there. So they're back that way. The doors are open right now, but I think they are going to close promptly at 8. So if something happens and you need to come back in the building and you know the doors are going to lock, let me know and I'll let you back in. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Larimer County Commissioner Jody Shattuck McNally.
Thank you, Michelle. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here today. Really excited to welcome you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Larimer County Commissioner Jody Shattuck McNally. You see a lot of familiar faces, and I'm the current chair of the Board of County Commissioners. And really excited about this series. I've been to all 4. This will be my 4th one. I'm also a graduate of the Water Leaders class, so I'm really a big fan of the Water Center, and I love it when they invite me to come back and talk. So it's really great things. I'm really glad that you're all here. This is such an important topic, and really appreciate the partnership and all the panelists and the partnership with the Water Center and others that helped us put on this series, because it's really important work and conversations. And for everyone online, I don't know if they can see me. Did I not go in front enough? Okay, good. And for everybody online too, really appreciate you being here today. It's really important that everyone have access. And I know a lot of folks with holidays. Hi, Jackie. Good to see you. That we were just in this room a week ago with an online thing. So just really glad to have everybody join us, whether you're here in person or online. Also wanted to just say, as you can see on the names in the back of the room, my colleagues, Larimer County Commissioner Kristen Stevens and Larimer County Commissioner John Cafalis, are also a really big part of the series and been very supportive, and we've all kind of taken a turn of hosting. But like I said, I've been really excited to be at all 4, because even being on a graduate, I'm learning a couple of new things every time, so it's great. So really the purpose of this series for us, and the reason we organized this, was to inform the community about water-related issues and initiatives in the region, and also to answer questions, provide resources, and get our residents and our folks engaged in water issues and provide opportunities to take action. And again, just thank you to our partner, the Colorado Water Center at CSU, for co-hosting with this. They are doing excellent work developing sessions and lining up speakers that inform us all about local water issues, even some of us that think we might know maybe a fraction about water, but come on in, Mr. Becker. So, and also I want to just say thanks to our staff. Our Assistant County Manager, Larry Cadridge, our Engineering Director, Mark Peterson. I see we have our Climate Smart and Sustainable Manager, Heidi Pruis. I also see just a lot of folks here for being here, and our Michelle Bird, our Information Director.
That's good.
There's with 2,000 people, all these different titles, and they changed some of them lately. It's like, oh, what's the new one? They're doing a lot of great work, and we are working on a county as our first ever. We did a risk assessment, and now we're doing our first ever county water-wide master plan with all of our partners, and it's really exciting work, and we're getting a lot of looky-loos from other counties like, what are you doing? That's kind of interesting. Maybe we should do that. I'm like, yeah, you should. So anyway, I want to just thank you again all for being here today. I'm really excited about this topic this evening, and I'm going to introduce Karen Slater, who is the Associate Director of the Colorado Water Center at Colorado State University, who are phenomenal and great partners in so many things with the county. And she leads the development and implementation of the center's outreach and engagement strategy and specializes in stakeholder engagement, watershed planning, and management. And Karen previously worked at the University of Florida Water Institute to improve water management in Florida through projects related to climate change, agricultural management practices, and freshwater systems. She also worked at the Sonoran Institute for a decade, which is a really cool institute, by the way. If you haven't looked them up, check them out. Leading the landscape scale restoration of the Colorado River Delta in Mexico. So, without further ado, Karen, please take it away. Thank you.
I think I'm going to stand. Okay. Yes. Thank you all for being here and for caring about water. It's very exciting to see past and current water literate leaders in the audience tonight. So, excited to have you here. And thank you, Commissioner Shattuck McNally, for that introduction, and for Larimer County in general for helping us to put together this event and really instigating this event and bringing this water education to the community. So appreciate that partnership. The Colorado Water Center at CSU, we focus on engaging communities, conducting research in partnership with faculty at CSU, and also doing our outreach and education at the university on water-related issues and helping to develop solutions that work for both community members and folks that are engaged in the water issues in our state of Colorado. So I'm going to introduce our speakers today and talk a little bit about the water education series in general. So we are at the last session of the water education series. If you missed the first three, don't worry, they're all recorded and online. Even if you just want some little bite-sized pieces, they're all recorded individually by presenter. So highly recommend the Water 101 talks at the beginning of each of the first three sessions. They're nice, concise presentations about all you need to know about water in our region. So great information there. Today we're going to focus on kind of the future for Larimer County Water. So looking at some short and long-term planning from Larimer County, as well as, I'm going to get into our topics here, flood planning efforts, an exciting initiative, collaborative initiative, the Northern Colorado Water Alliance, diversity, equity, and inclusion in water, and finally, we're going to provide you with some resources and opportunities for engagement going forward. So we're hoping to have all of our speakers here. I'll introduce them in a second, but we'll hear from them first. We'll have about 5 minutes for Q&A after each one, and then we'll have a half hour at the end that's just open for discussion and further questions from the audience. So I will now introduce our excellent lineup of speakers today. And again, thank you, speakers, for agreeing to present and share your knowledge with this group. So first we'll have Lori Marie Kadrich. She's the Assistant County Manager of Larimer County. She previously served as the Larimer County Director of Community Planning, Infrastructure, and Resources from 2019 to 2022. She has decades of service in local government leadership positions at municipal and county levels in both Wyoming and Colorado, and a master's degree in public administration. Then we'll hear from John Hunt. He is the National Practice Leader of Hydraulics at Ayers Associates Incorporated and a Larimer County Flood Review Board member. He has more than 30 years of experience in water resources engineering and manages Ayers, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Ayers River Engineering discipline and projects in bridge hydraulics, scour analysis, culvert design, and roadway drainage. He has been responsible for the hydraulics, scour, and countermeasure studies for hundreds of bridges in 15 states and overseas. Then we'll hear from Claire Bouchard. She's the Director of Community Engagement and Communications for the Community Foundation of Northern Colorado. In her role, she convenes regional leaders around community issues, including water, disasters, workforce, and community growth. She has lived and worked in Larimer County for nearly 20 years. And just want to shout out to the Community Foundation of Northern Colorado for their partnership in our Water Literate Leaders Program. And on working on that same presentation, we'll hear from Cecil Gutierrez. He served on the Loveland City Council for 10 years, from 2007 to 2017, and 8 of those were as mayor. As a graduate of Western State College, Cecil also received a master's degree at Colorado State University.
In 1999, Cecil retired from a career as a high school band director at Loveland High School. He currently serves as the executive board of the Community Foundation of Northern Colorado, the Colorado Transportation Investment Office Board of Directors, and the Board of Trustees of Western Colorado University. So staying quite busy. And then we'll hear finally from Jessica Thrasher. She is the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Programs Leader at the Colorado Water Center. She focuses on creating and managing programs that promote a diverse water workforce that represents the community served, equitable access to water resources and information, and developing resources that promote integration of DEI practices into the water field. She is dedicated to fostering collaboration, innovation, and inclusion of diverse perspectives to build an equitable, sustainable water future for all. So, with that, I think we will open it up to our first speaker, Lori Kedrich. Come on up. And let's hear it for our speakers.
Thank you. And welcome everyone to Larimer County. And I would just like to begin by thanking Michelle and Karen for all the work that they've done putting together this series. We would not have been able to have the effectiveness of the speakers and the programs without the support of the Water Center, and I really appreciate that. And without Michelle's help, we wouldn't be able to have these all filmed and on time and ready to go. So my role tonight is really to talk about why is Larimer County concerned about water planning. And I would begin by saying it's because of the passion of the 3 elected officials that we have right now. All of them, as Commissioner Shattuck McNally mentioned, are graduates of the Water Literate program and have varied interest in supporting issues related to water. The county is not a water provider, but in our comprehensive plan, we are identified by our community as a convener of some regional issues. And the Board of County Commissioners has asked that we convene information related to water. And so we'll share tonight how we're doing that. One of the first ways is we're looking at water planning countywide. So right now there's a lot of individual water plans for various water providers in the region, but there's not a comprehensive plan that covers the entire county. We're even working with our partners in Weld County to discuss how we could do something jointly with Weld County. So we're also part of the NOCO Water Alliance. I'm not going to touch on that very much, just to share what the county's role is in that, because you'll have another speaker tonight to speak on that. We've also developed a climate smart future ready plan, and that has some components in it that impact water planning and water usage. And then finally, we're beginning an adoption of another 5-year strategic plan, and we also have goals and objectives related to water within that plan. Our foundational work began in 2022 with an existing conditions assessment, and you can read for yourself the scope and the deliverables, but it was the first time that the county has undertaken looking at water conditions across the county overall. One of the key takeaways we learned through that process is the relationship between what we're seeing for response to disasters that occur in our county and the relationship between the watersheds. And so that existing conditions report provided a lot of good information that the Office of Emergency Management is using today and that we'll use continuing moving forward with the water plan that we didn't have previously. This is a picture of the plan and the website that you can find it at. And so I included that if you want to go ahead and take a look at it at a later time. That led us to developing a water master plan. We were able to secure federal funding to do this plan as well as local funding to match it. We're in the process of doing that. We've gone through a request for proposal process and selected some firms to help us. Because of what we learned about the relationship to resiliency in our community related to natural disasters, we hired a firm that is specializing in identifying what they call high hazard areas in the county related to water. And so we're anxious to get that mapping done and get that information to our teams. Who's going to be involved in this? You can see on the left-hand side all the different agencies within Larimer County that are helping with the water plan. And then on the right-hand side, we also have partner agencies throughout the region that are assisting everyone from environmental groups to the other municipalities or water districts that are in the area. What our role is we want to use these documents for long-range planning. We want to better inform the community for information related to potential disasters, whether there are things that have happened already that have impacted the watersheds or things that may happen in the future. We want to be able to collect data. So as I mentioned earlier, there hasn't been a data set for the entire county, so we'll be able to use this master plan for those purposes. Our data is public, so any of the other water providers or other agencies can use the information to better coordinate maybe their nonprofit agency response in their work in the watersheds. And we want to especially then take recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners that might deal with any kind of regulations that the county might enact to assist in reducing the risk of water scarcity within our county. And so those are the things that we're looking forward to doing after the master plan is completed. This is a list of the events we've held to date. We've formed a water advisory group to help with the master planning efforts. We formed a technical advisory committee. And then just last week, our first public open houses began on the water plan. There is also public questionnaires that can be filled out by the community. And again, the website is listed down at the bottom of the slide if you want to participate in that. In the NOCO Water Alliance, the county is new to this planning effort. And again, we're not a water provider, but we certainly have water interest in terms of agricultural use. As well, our Department of Natural Resources manages the reservoir system, so we have a very large interest in recreational use of water. And so we were invited to participate in this alliance. As a participant, we provide information to the Board of County Commissioners about the work of the alliance. The county is a regulatory authority for very large water projects. So if you think of the Thornton Pipeline or the NIST project or the Glade Reservoir project, the Board of County Commissioners has oversight for those projects and has to issue a permit before those projects can move forward. And again, I mentioned the agricultural and watershed health. And then the other thing that we are looking at are fee schedules. So one of the key things that we're working regionally on is the high cost of water related to housing and or usage of water. So right now, all of the water districts have separate fee schedules. And that might encourage development to occur in a certain area of the county rather than another area of the county. And that development might be a large distance away from jobs, for example. So that causes more challenges with transportation. And so as an alliance of Larimer County and Weld County, we're talking about how can we work together to get housing closer to jobs and closer to where the water is that can serve that population. In our Climate Smart Future Ready program, we're in phase 3 of the plan development. The purpose is to help us better adapt and mitigate the social, economic, and environmental risk that the county faces from climate change. We have over 50 partner agencies that are being coordinated through this effort. And specifically related to water, we want to increase water use efficiency across the urban, agricultural, and ecological needs of our community. And that includes work for ourselves. So Larimer County has a separate plan to implement these very same goals. It's called I Care, and we're working on becoming more efficient ourselves. And then finally, our strategic plan. We're also in the final stages of development on the strategic plan. Our previous strategic plan did have some water sharing goals and water planning goals as well, which led to these planning efforts. And our current strategic plan will have a natural and built environment goal, and that will include things to improve the air and water quality in the region, as well to improve forest and watershed health. And we don't know specifically what they're going to be because the plan isn't quite done, but we know the topic areas on that. And with that, I'd invite any questions you might have.
And I'll remind folks too that we'll have panel discussion at the end. So if you have clarifying questions about the presentation, now is the time to do that. If you kind of have bigger picture questions, we'll wait till all of our presenters have had their chance, and then we'll bring all of our panel forward, because a lot of times the questions that you all have, it's not just for one person. You want multiple answers, right? So any clarifying questions for Lori? You're so good, Lori. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so Karen is going to pull up our next presentation. And Karen, I think my computer was dinging, so you might want to silent, so you guys don't have to listen ding the whole time. And up next, we have John Hunt, and he is going to talk about Larimer County flood planning. So let's give Karen a second to get the presentation up, and we will turn it over to John. And John, you're welcome to use the hand mic or the mic at the podium. You probably don't want to bring them together or you'll get an awkward screech. Terrible sounds. And then there's a clicker. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Michelle, and thanks to all of you for being here. It's really gratifying to see so many people here who care so much about water in Larimer County. So my topic is the Larimer County Flood Review Board and Larimer County flood planning efforts. And there is a connection between those two that I hope by the end of this presentation you'll be clear on. What is the Flood Review Board? This is what comes out of the land use code, that the Flood Review Board exists to make recommendations to the county engineer. Now that's an important phrase. The county engineer, many of you know him, Mark Peterson in the back row here. He's the decider. The board is not a deciding board, we're a recommending board. And so those recommendations have to do with floodplain development, variances to and interpretations of Article 12. Who knows what Article 12 is? Anybody? Oh, Karen, do you know?
Yes, I do know this. Would you like me to answer your question?
Yes, please.
It's our floodplain regulations for Larimer County.
Right, it's the floodplain regulations in the land use code. So that's everything that deals with what you can do in the floodplain overlay district is in Article 12. Map amendment proposals, more broadly, map change proposals. So if somebody has a reason that they would like to change one of the floodplain maps, generally the board gets involved in reviewing that proposal. And floodplain project reviews, essentially projects that impact the floodplain, bridge crossings, pipeline crossings, or that have the potential to impact the floodplain. Most often, the Flood Review Board will be asked to be involved in that. And everything we do, all of our purview involves the floodplain overlay district. If there's something you're doing outside of that, then the Flood Review Board doesn't really have anything to say or recommend about that. A little more about the board. We're a board of volunteers, and we're all citizens of Larimer County. We have 7 members. We were a little bit short of 7 for a while, but now we're fully fleshed out. I think 7 is the max. Is that right, Karen? Yes. It's as big as it's going to be. Something else we all have in common is that we tend to have relevant technical expertise and professional background related to floodplains, hydraulics, engineering, hydrology. So we've got CSU civil engineering professor, we've got engineering consultants, we've got a geologist, and I think that covers all of our stripes and types. Now, when we're working as a board, per our purview and also per our bent and our passions, our emphasis is on public safety, and something else I should have put in this slide is community resilience, which is tied into mitigation and avoidance of flood disasters. Larimer County's been doing this for decades. They've been focusing on resilience since long before resilience was cool. Another thing I like about our board is I think we do a good job of weighing the big picture on every case that we're asked to weigh in on. We take this really seriously. All of the board members, again, just it's part of their bent. We tend to be very conscientious people. And there's a lot to consider. There's the regulatory requirements, some of which we don't have any latitude on. Sometimes there is some latitude. We want to be weighing technical considerations because most of us have a pretty good idea what is technically correct. We're weighing public safety, the public good. We're also giving strong consideration to the needs, the special circumstances, and the rights of property owners. We don't take that lightly either. And so sometimes it feels like we're walking a tightrope, but I feel like we do a good job as a board of striving for consensus and reaching consensus. That's one of the things I'm really proud of and happy about with the board. I've been on the board for, I can't tell you precisely how long, and that's embarrassing. It's embarrassingly long. But in all of those years, I can only remember one recommendation that was not a consensus recommendation where we had a dissenting vote. And that's pretty remarkable when you think of how many cases we heard. Is it because we're taking it lightly and we just say, yeah, whatever? No, not at all. We take it very seriously and we work the problem until we have something at least very close to a consensus. And that's bringing together a lot of diverse viewpoints. Even though we have kind of the same technical and professional backgrounds, we still have different biases. We look at things from different angles. Even with that diversity, we are successful and work hard at getting consensus. And I'll just say that in my whole professional career, being a member of the Flood Review Board is really maybe the most rewarding thing that I do or have done, just because of how fun it is to work with county staff and with the other board members. All right, more about the Flood Review Board's job. Essentially, what our role is to provide advice. Again, we're not deciders. We make recommendations in the realm of floodplain management. I'm going to talk more about Larimer County's overall picture in floodplain management. And so a lot of that has to do with floodplain development permit applications. If somebody has something significant that they want to do within the floodplain overlay district, and that is basically all the area that is regulated through either FEMA, is either part of a FEMA floodplain or a local floodplain, you have to obtain a floodplain development permit. And there's an application process, and not all floodplain development permits are seen by the board. In fact, I don't know, Karen, is it a majority or it's maybe a small minority of floodplain development permits that are seen by us, because the county engineering department has very capable staff. It's just there's kind of a special slice of cases and situations that either must go to the board or are referred to the board because of complexity or whatever. Variances. The county doesn't have a lot of latitude in granting variances in the floodplain regulations, but there is some latitude. And in certain situations, when somebody's asking for a variance, the problem is tricky enough that it'll come before the Flood Review Board. And if people want to change floodplain maps, they want to do revisions. I mentioned this before. The county staff will ask the Flood Review Board to make a technical review of what's being submitted, see if we believe it's reasonable, if it's sound and it's justified. And ultimately, the county engineer, Mark, if it's going to go on to FEMA, he has to sign what's called an acknowledgement, community acknowledgement. And we give recommendations as to whether or not the county engineer should sign the acknowledgement. And then special reviews. I think I mentioned this before. This is where, roads, road crossings, pipeline crossings, and so on. It's in the Flood Review Board's purview to review the technical aspects of that. Okay, also occasionally, this is rare, but occasionally something that's not in any of those categories is when something is going on that people are a little upset about. Maybe it's a neighborhood discovers that a certain aspect of the floodplain ordinance is causing restrictions on their neighborhood that they didn't know existed, they weren't aware of. They become aware of it. That creates a great deal of frustration, and sometimes those cases come to the Flood Review Board. If you want to learn more about the board, that URL there, larimer.gov/boards/Flood Review Board, will tell you more than what I've told you here. By the way, I failed to mention that there's another board member here, Travis Rounsaville. And so Travis, as I go on here, please interrupt me if I say something stupid. That could happen. You know that very well. Also, somebody who's not a member of the board, but who works closely with the board and is at every meeting is also here, Karen Nazat, with Larimer County staff. All right, now talking about, this is now moving into flood planning. And really, flood planning in almost any community in the United States starts with floodplain management. The biggest component of flood planning is floodplain management. So that's through the county floodplain ordinances, enforcing those, enforcing state statutes and regulations. And both of those things, the county's ordinances and the state statutes, really their foundation and the bulk of their content really comes from the National Flood Insurance Program, which most of you know as FEMA. And so I was going to talk about the history of the National Flood Insurance Program, but I don't want all of you to just drop your faces down on the table. So what I'm going to say instead is it's a carrot and stick program. It's got goodies and it's got strings attached. So the goodies are the National Flood Insurance Program makes it possible for people to purchase flood insurance. There isn't really much of a private market for flood insurance. Where it is available, it's rare, and where it is available, it's highly expensive. However, it is more attainable, more affordable through the National Flood Insurance Program. You could say, I don't know if anybody at FEMA would object to this term, but it is subsidized flood insurance. It's subsidized because the premiums that people pay don't really cover all the expenses of flood insurance. It covers a lot, but taxpayers are always pitching in when claims are paid out to policyholders. So the good thing is that communities that participate in the National Flood Insurance Program make available to the residents of those communities flood insurance. And probably raise your hand if you are a flood insurance policyholder. Anybody here? You're all too smart to buy property in the floodplains, aren't you? All right, I should have known. But believe me, it's a really important thing to have available to your community. Now, that's the goodies. The strings attached are any community that's going to participate in that program has to have ordinances that meet the minimum standards of the National Flood Insurance Program. And if you were to dig into the county's ordinances and compare them to the NFIP, you would find that the bulk, the dominant portion of the county's ordinances comes straight from FEMA. And so the reason I try to make that clear is that sometimes people will, it's weird because it's federal regulations, but the face of those regulations is people like Karen and Mark at the county. So it's locally administered, but mostly federally derived. And so people will say, why can't you give me a break on this? Why do you have to be so hard-nosed? Well, the reason is they can't, because it's a federal regulation, and there are severe sanctions. The sanction that the county could experience for allowing violations of the federally derived regulations is to be kicked out of the National Flood Insurance Program. And what that means is there is no longer access to flood insurance through the NFIP. And when that happens, I've worked with communities that were under that threat, not any in Colorado. When that happens, suddenly the NFIP becomes the most important thing that the county's got going on, because people are really getting angry at the prospect of not being able to have flood insurance. Okay, I just got a signal. Okay, so this is a floodplain development permit. Again, that's a big part of floodplain management. Enforcing the flood protection elevation for new structures in the floodplain. That's essentially 18 inches above the base flood elevation. If you've got a dwelling that's going to be built in the floodplain, you have to be 18 inches above. Floodway regulations. Now, this is an example of a regulation that's in the county ordinances, but it's federally derived, and there really is no latitude to provide variances on that. This is the thing that will get the county kicked out of the flood insurance program if they allow violations of this. Special restrictions in growth management areas. So, for instance, the city of Fort Collins has more restrictive guidelines or requirements in the Poudre floodplain. And outside the city limits, in unincorporated county, but in the growth management area, the county has agreed to enforce the city's special restrictions in the Poudre GMA. All right, so on the looking ahead part, we have good news. Some of you won't care at all about this, but it means a lot to some of us. That is that there's been updated floodplain and regulatory maps that have been available technically for many years. They're finally becoming official and effective soon, let's say months, when it has been kind of unknown in the past. Okay, last thing I want to mention, the county has a great and robust emergency flood warning system. What the graphic that you see on the right there, oh, by the way, one thing I forgot to mention, I had put, there it is, that web address right there has all kinds of really great information. If anything comes up that's of interest to you that's in a floodplain in Larimer County, unincorporated Larimer County, you'll find information that'll help you at that web page. Okay, now, flood warning system. Did you know that the county has installed a bunch of real-time rain gauges out there especially in the mountain watersheds for the streams in Larimer County to help provide flood warning for people who need it, and also stream stage gauges. They're tied in, they've got this web page. This is called Wet Map. You get to it through the Larimer County engineering web page. And you can look at the current readings of any rain gauge or stream gauge on the system. It's tied to LEDA, the Larimer Emergency Telephone Authority. And you can subscribe to LEDA alerts at that web address right there. Okay, I'm very sorry, Michelle.
Are you done?
I'm done.
Awesome. All right. I think we have, Bill has a question. Again, clarifying questions is what we're looking for here.
Thanks, Michelle. When FEMA sets its boundaries, does the county or your board have any interest or influence in suggesting to them that some of those boundaries may be in error and might want to change?
That's a good question. And the answer is yes. So, first of all, the Larimer County engineer has influence on that. And in fact, these map updates that we've been talking about that have been out there for a long time, most of them were done by state funding, by contractors that are working for the state. And over the years, they've had this rollout of the products when they were in very preliminary phases. They allowed the county, the cities, and so forth to review the map products. And now I can't recall when the board has been asked to look at, I don't know, was the board ever asked to look at like the CHAMP mapping or, yeah. And so the answer is we weren't brought into that. But if there was something, let's say that Mark or county engineering staff were looking at something that was really giving them heartburn, they might say, well, we really want to push back on this. And it would not be unheard of for them to put that on the board agenda, to look at this and say, what do you people think about this? So yes, the county has input, and sometimes they'll ask the board to weigh in on that. Now, in the case of where somebody other than the state or FEMA is wanting to change a map for some reason, change it because of, for instance, a project that requires that incentivizes them to try to change the floodplain. That's very much a county review thing, and the flood review board will be involved in that. You're welcome.
Amber, you got a question?
Thank you. I may have misunderstood this, but when you said how would someone change the flood review plan, the map? So, for example, if I'm a private property owner with land, say in the 100-year flood, but kind of at the border,
Yeah.
before I had any infrastructure or anything on there, could I build up that land and place berms and then apply for that, or how would I apply for that?
You can do that. In fact, that's a very special device called the Larimer Letter of Map Provision based on fill. And so say you're at the edge of the floodplain and you say, well, if I just add 4 feet of fill, maybe 100 feet wide or something like that, now I can do what I need to do. I can get that portion removed from the floodplain with some constraints. Like you can't go into what's called the floodway. I mentioned the floodway. That's a special part of the floodplain. And floodway means don't touch, basically. And if you do touch, you've got really heavy restrictions that you got to meet. But if you stay out of the floodway, yes, you can place fill and then you can develop on it. And before you do that, you would apply for this letter of map provision based on fill. And you can't put basements on those properties. That's not allowed.
Awesome. I think that's the time we have for John. So, John, thank you very much. I appreciate
Thank
it. I can't say I Flood Review Board is the most engaging thing for me, but you did a great job. I appreciate it. While Karen is changing up the PowerPoint presentation and Claire and Cecil are coming up here, just want to remind you guys, we are broadcasting and filming this tonight, so that's why I want you to use mics. You know, you guys have all watched a video where you can't hear the question that's being asked or the response because people don't use the mic. So that's why I'm encouraging you guys to use the mics. I'm not doing it just for fun. And I'm excited to turn it over to the former mayor of my hometown, Cecil Gutierrez, and my friend Claire. So thank you guys.
Hey, good evening, everybody. I'm Claire Bouchard, like you've heard. And I just want to say thank you so much to Larimer County for hosting these events. I don't know about you, but my knowledge of water is really around like I like to drink it, I like to water my flowers, I like to play in it. So I've had the honor over the last year and a half to learn a lot about water through the Water Literate Leaders class. I'm a grad and highly recommend it, but I feel like this class is so rich and full of content. You almost can skip that if you're busy or, the application process is too much, but thank you so much for bringing water to everyday people. It's normalizing conversations. It's building a vocabulary that we can all use, and that's kind of at the heart of what we're here to talk to you about today. So real quick, how many of you, show of hands, know about the Community Foundation of Northern Colorado? Okay, good. Many of you, yay. Well, we are basically a philanthropic bank. We're a 501c3. Our vision is, let me see here, I got to advance this, don't I? Our vision is to create impact and leave a legacy, and we do that through our mission, which is creating transformational community impact by inspiring philanthropy and engaging the region. We're a facilitator of philanthropy. I said that in the mission, but basically we try to match donors with their philanthropic passions and intent and find nonprofit work and connect them together so we can do more, longer, farther, faster with endowments and impactful legacy work. We're also, another bucket of our work is convening, and that's one of the reasons we're here today, and Cecil can talk more about that too, but we convene groups around water, around business development, economic stability, jobs, growth, and education. But we're really a community partner, and that's why a lot of you know about us, so great.
We are governed by a board, and it's a very diverse and very dedicated board of directors. They are community leaders in the region, from business leaders to those involved in agriculture, philanthropists to nonprofit professionals, and we run the gamut of all of the different organizations within Northern Colorado. And with that, the board brings a very diverse set of perspectives. And this has provided the Community Foundation the ability to reach into various segments of our communities. And it has given us the opportunity to be nonpartisan conveners and regional leaders in that convening. We strongly believe that if we bring the right people to the room and we bring them together for nonpartisan conversations, we can develop collaborative and creative plans for addressing complex issues.
There you go.
And here are some examples of some of the community projects that we were honored to be a part of. As the mayor of Loveland, I was excited to be a partner with the Community Foundation for the Destination Downtown Loveland project, revitalization of downtown Loveland. Two of the main projects that the Community Foundation was involved in that Destination Downtown Loveland were the Rialto Bridge project and the Art Space project. This project and the involvement of the Community Foundation has had a significant impact on the revitalization of downtown Loveland. We were involved in a fund for when the fires in 2020 devastated parts of our region, the Cameron Peak Fire and the East Troublesome fires. In 2013, the Community Foundation of Northern Colorado partnered with the Weld County Community Foundation to convene the Regional Leaders Initiative. And as a result of those meetings of government officials has come the Water Literate Leaders course, a water strat-op process that has culminated in the Northern Colorado Water Alliance.
Yeah, so I love the topic of tonight's forum around, what's the future of Larimer County water, and I'm again thankful to the Water Center and the county to include us because this is showing you hopefully today that you don't have to be a water expert to be involved with water issues in Northern Colorado. We welcome all voices, all experience, all backgrounds. So that's kind of one of the reasons we're here tonight to talk about that diversity. Tagging on to what Cecil was saying. So about 10 years ago, our past president, Ray Caraway, was talking to Ray Otto in the city of Greeley and the town of Windsor, city of Loveland, and city of Fort Collins leaders about how do we talk about our region as we grow, as we change? What are some of those issues that we're tackling that we can do together rather than separate in our own communities? We can learn from each other. So about 10 years ago, they started coming together quarterly for breakfast, the mayors, the mayor pro tems, and the city managers or town managers. Sample discussion topics are transportation, economic development, water and regionalism, mental health, community engagement, and legislative updates and topics. And so just a few years after that, 2019, one of their lead conversations were around water and the shared vision to secure northern Colorado. This was soon after some of the water rights of our area got bought by Thornton. Soon around that time, the city of Aurora purchased water rights from our area. And they're really trying to focus on keeping water in the river, preserving some level of irrigated farming because agriculture is such a huge legacy for our area and it's important for our region and the country, frankly. They wanted to maintain a desirable level of utility service, cost, and quality. And then they asked their water utility staff and several water providers to meet and come together and talk about it.
So between 2020 and 2022, a water provider planning process was undertaken. It was facilitated by the Patterson Group. The original partners were City of Evans, Fort Collins, Greeley, and Loveland, the towns of Windsor and Milliken, and the North Weld County Water District and Fort Collins Loveland Water District. The mission established by the group was to build sustainable water systems for the future of northern Colorado. There were 4 action initiatives as a result of this planning process. One was to develop a unified communication strategy around northern Colorado water interests. 2, work on strategies for watershed protection, watershed management, and restoration and recovery after natural disasters. 3, develop a framework to identify gaps and opportunities. And 4, come up with a plan to address the growing demand for water supply in the region. But in my opinion, the most important result was the relationship building that resulted. It took some time, but as those relationships were built, and we have had opportunities during our meetings for each water provider to share what is going on in their particular area, it became obvious that relationships were being built and they started to help one another, and projects between different water provider organizations started occurring. One within the city of Loveland and the town of Windsor that just was in the news, a 10-year lease of raw water was made from the city of Loveland to the town of Windsor as an emergency raw water supply. Those are the kinds of cooperative efforts that have become a result of this collaborative effort and some of these meetings of the Water Alliance.
Yeah, so late last year, this group of water providers, we were sitting together and I had been in meetings where after 2.5 hours of meetings, someone would say, "Tell me again why we're here. What are we doing?" And we're like, "Oh my gosh, we just spent 2.5 hours talking." But it's really evolved, and now the people involved have asked us to plan some Thursday afternoon meetings where they can go get a beer after, and they linger. We have to kick them out of the rooms because other groups have to come in. So it's really flourishing. They also, over this time period, just earlier this year, came up with a mission for their group, and I'm sorry I have to read it. It's collaborating and educating for the protection of water resources and systems to ensure a resilient future for the northern Colorado Front Range. They have created water messages together. These messages are used for themselves professionally to share back to their elected officials, their boards, their constituents and customers. I won't read them right now, but I think, Michelle, these will be available afterwards, right, to go into deeper. But I wanted to talk about how the work group has expanded. Just as Cecil had mentioned, we had 16 original partners at the table. And over the last few months, earlier this year, we talked about who else should be at the table. What other providers are we not having here? This just went blank. Sorry. I'll just do that. How's that? Oh. Okay. Well, this was basically our last slide, but I do want to mention that our work group has expanded thanks to Lori for coming. So Larimer County is now coming. Oh, thanks, Karen. Cool. Did it go?
So Michelle, are you an ads fan?
Yeah, just a little. In addition to Larimer County coming to the table and working, we have Northern Water. I see Jeff back there. Thanks for coming with Brad. And we've got Pat Wells coming tomorrow morning to our meeting. Platte River Power Authority comes to our meetings. The towns of Berthoud, Wellington, Windsor, of course, Johnstown, Eaton. Weld County is starting to come, which is really exciting, and our Little Thompson the Little Thompson Water District. So this isn't the end list. I'm sure there will be more. We're really excited to have some of our smaller regional communities coming because they're experiencing some really substantial population growth and housing development growth. And of course, where are those housing developments going? On land that was probably farmed before, and there's water rights associated with that. And so there's this whole intersection of growing population, water being used in a different way, and how do our water providers and our political system and political friends make the best out of all of that. I also want to give a shout out to Cecil. He comes to every single meeting. He's a key community partner, and he brings decades of relationship building and accountability to the group. And that has really added a level of authority and accountability, like I said, that we couldn't do without Cecil. And then also our hired facilitators. We work with CDR Associates. They're our current facilitators who work on the infrastructure and water space across the Front Range, and they bring a real high level of professionalism that keeps the conversation going. They ask the hard questions. And then the foundation, we just serve as like that backbone organization, set up the meetings, order breakfast burritos, arrange a room at a brewery, those kind of really important details. But that's how work gets done, as you know. So thank you so much again for inviting us. Any parting words, Cecil?
No, this water, I'm just excited about the Northern Colorado Water Alliance and what it will bring for the future of Northern Colorado. Thank you for having us this evening.
Don't walk away yet.
Okay.
We might have some questions. Anybody have any questions about the Northern Colorado Water Alliance for Cecil and for Claire? Commissioner Cavallis. Hi.
Thank you, Claire and Cecil. I'm wondering, since there's such a close intersection between municipal and ag use of water, what kind of representation is on the Northern Colorado Water Alliance from the agricultural interests?
You know, that has not been explored as of yet. It's a really great question. We would love to have more of our agricultural partners. We've also talked about having our business community, agribusiness community there, a hydro business, as well as Chamber of Commerce, right, Bill? We've talked about that a little bit, as well as our ditch companies. So I believe as the providers build trust and talk about their shared systems and storage issues, delivery systems, all of those big issues, more and more people will be included at the table. I can only guess.
John, I think long term, I think that is part of the long-term vision is that but we have to have a place to start, and this was kind of the starting foundation. The water providers that for quite a long time, quite frankly, there was siloing. right? Each group did their own thing, and yet they were doing some cooperative things. But we had to have a place to start where we could at least have that original fundamental basis of what the water providers were doing, and then we can reach out from there, like Claire says, to the agriculture. We think that would be great, and to the business community, especially those businesses that do use significant amount of water, brewers, and you know the long list. So
Thank you very much. And some of those ag folks are here tonight, and I'm sure they're willing to engage.
You know you're supposed to use a mic.
The ag folks are here tonight, and they're willing to engage.
absolutely.
Awesome. I'm glad that we can make some of those connections tonight. Oh, do we have a question? Let's do it.
My question is, this is something that's come up during the Larimer County Water Master Plan process, as well as the question of why there's so many different water providers and why there wasn't a regional planning effort. So I'm glad to see that there is that happening. Can you answer the first part of that question? Maybe a little bit of history of why there's so many different and siloed water providers?
Is that a question a little above pay grade here? I don't know if Cecil, you look like I don't know. I might ask Karen to jump in here if she has some background.
Well, I'll give you my perspective, and it goes back historically, way back when, right? And as each entity and each ditch company and each, it just developed that way over history, and it goes way back to 150, 160 years ago. And so that's what has happened. And each one of those are governmental entities within themselves. Each district is a governmental entity that has a board of directors. And so I think our goal was to try and at least get them all in the room and start making those connections. And that was our initial thoughts and goals. And once we do that, once they start collaborating and cooperating with each other and building additional ideas and moving forward with these kinds of things, then we can start bringing other people on board. And maybe there'll be, who knows what happens from there.
And I can tell you, yes. And we did talk about this more at one of our previous sessions. I think this exact question was asked. Other people that were at those sessions are nodding their heads. I think it was, I don't remember if it was session 2 or session 3. There you go. So someone answered that exact question in session 3. So Cecil and Claire, thank you very, very much. We'll bring you back up later. All right, so we're moving right along. Up next, we have Jessica Thrasher with the Colorado Water Center. And as Karen is getting her presentation up there, Jessica is going to talk to us a little bit about diversity, equity, inclusion, and water.
Thank you.
I have lost a hand mic. Is there one sitting up there on the podium?
There is. Would you like
okay,
it?
Good. Nope, you're good. I just wanted to make sure I found it. Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica Thrasher. I'm also an educator, so I tend to be lengthy. So I will be paying close attention to the time, with help, I'm sure. So we're going to be talking about the new focus at the Colorado Water Center on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Okay. What water equity means, what a diverse water workforce looks like, language justice, and then how you can get involved. So to start off with, I'm sure that Karen has talked about the Colorado Water Center, but these are our 3 main focus areas on water workforce development, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and agricultural water management. So for today, I'll be talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So my position is new to the Water Center. I started in March, and it really shows the leadership of the Colorado Water Center in leading the way in making sure that diversity, equity, and inclusion is being talked about in the water space. It's a huge gap that we're seeing right now, and there's a lot of room to grow. So I'm very proud to be working with Karen and John and the rest of the Colorado Water Center staff on this very important issue. As a part of this program, there's a lot of building going on, which I love. I love program building. It's the exciting, it's kind of the messy time of finding out opportunities to really plug into what the community needs are. So we're very nimble and flexible. Some of the programs that we're working on right now are discussing equitable access to resources, ways to diversify the water workforce, and integration of DEI practices in the water field. And I'll also be talking about the Water Fellows program, which is a fantastic program working with students. But before we get started into that, I'd like to paint the picture of the problem. I think we can't start talking about solutions until we know what the problems are. So to talk about environmental injustice, this has been put forth by the Protégete Colorado Latino Climate Justice Policy Handbook. And I'll be providing these resources as well. The blue are links that you'll be able to access after you receive the presentations. So there's different community members that have different access to environmental benefits. This is different access to green spaces, clean water, and air, and also exposure to environmental harms such as pollution. I was recently at a presentation where we had some panelists talking about genetic diseases. And I always learn something from water presentations. And what they were talking about was how when we go to the doctor and we fill out our past medical history, we can talk about, did your grandmother have this disease? Which side of the family? And what she said is that there's new research being done right now to see if these diseases are actually genetic or if they're caused environmentally because families have lived in the same spaces with the same environmental harms for generations. So the diseases aren't actually genetic. And that opened my mind so much in a horrifying kind of way. But it's not something that I'd ever considered, that might be something that impacts people for generations. And she was talking about, she lives in Commerce City, and how her son gets nosebleeds and how she's anemic, and that's because of the poison in the air and the water that they experience. Additionally, extreme climate events impact those who are most vulnerable. And so those are low-income areas, those are the people who do live on the floodplains and who are impacted by the severe weather that we have. So these are droughts, these are also floods. Additionally, mobile home parks. This recently came to my attention because I had a CSU student come up to me and say, I live in a mobile home park on Harmony, and I have had raw sewage coming up in my bathtub. My water gets shut off, and I don't know when it's going to get shut back on or turned back on because it's shut off without notice. And there have been cases of lead in my water. And I had no idea that was impacting people here in Fort Collins. When you think of issues like that, I would think of issues in third world countries, not my neighbors, and especially students. I was thinking about how can this person learn when that is what they wake up with and have to deal with first thing. And so I have been talking to a lot of folks about mobile home park issues, and there was a recent House bill passed, House Bill 1287, with the tireless work from Protégete, Beatriz Soto, and also Representative Elizabeth Velasco, and both of them previously lived in mobile home park communities. So this is something I'd like to elevate as a need to come together to address and make sure that everyone in our communities have equal access to sanitation and clean water. Which brings me to the definition of water equity. What is water equity? As defined by the U.S. Water Alliance, there are 4 main pillars to water equity. Ensuring that all people have clean, safe, affordable drinking water and wastewater services. And this, affordability is a really big issue. Affordability, where we have different prices for base water costs from area to area. And then, of course, water quality. Community sharing in the economic, social, and environmental benefits of water systems. So that's in workforce development. If there's contracts for replacing infrastructure, are community members able to take the contracts for that? Who is getting those contracts? And is that money staying in the community, or are they from out of state? Communities have an active engagement in the decision-making process. Being at meetings, being asked to participate in what their communities could look like moving forward. And then, as we heard from a panelist earlier, resilience in the face of floods, droughts, and other climate risks. So that's about putting funding into these communities that are more climate vulnerable. Next, I want to talk about diverse water workforce, specifically the Water Fellows Program. So this program was started, Julie will know the exact answer there in the back, 5 years ago-ish. And it started as a program for DACA students. And then it transformed into a program for minorities and underserved communities who have not been part of the water conversation in the past. So these students get paid for a year to participate in this program. This year, we opened up the program to undergraduates and graduate students, and also to students from other marginalized identities, not just being minority members. Because of this, we had a tremendous interest in this program here at Colorado State University. Last year, we had 8 students in the program. This year, we had 30 applications, and we had funding for 12. So I asked John Tracy, I said, these students, I can't even tell you how amazing they are. Is there funding for more? And he said, let's do 20. So we have 20 students in this program from 15 different majors across campus. We was hearing from the other panelists about needing to hear those diverse perspectives. We have civil engineers, but we also have students from social work and family and consumer science and sociology and anthropology. And as we move forward and talk about how we can be resilient as a community and equitable, it is critical that we have those other perspectives because water is personal. Water affects all of us. And by having these different ways that we come at the issue, we can really look at new and innovative solutions. Additionally to the diversity in the background of where they're from and in also their majors, we also have a diversity of what year they are. So we have first year all the way through PhD. I opened it up to graduate students because I thought, these undergraduate students might not even know that graduate school is an option for them, and to facilitate those conversations and that learning between the two student types. This year, we also received funding from CSU Spur to have a pilot program in Denver. We've partnered with Metro State University to kick off our first cohort of Denver Water Fellows, and with 5 students and 4 majors represented. And we have a mixture of third year all the way through master's students for this program as well. So as you can see, we have some photos here. We went on a field trip and we partnered with the City of Fort Collins, and we took the students to the river. I was surprised that there are many students who hadn't been there. And so it's like, what an amazing opportunity to not only talk about water and learn about water, but to actually see water and learn about it on the river. Additionally, we take students to conferences. The top right photo, we were at the Colorado WaterWise conference. And then the bottom left, we went to the Water in the West conference last week, where the students had the opportunity to meet Secretary Vilsack, Colorado Commissioner Kate Greenberg, and also representatives from Senator Hickenlooper's staff. They also were able to be an active participant in the conference and introduce moderators. So, and then they also were randomly asked, the middle picture there, to do a podcast in the middle of the event. So these kind of opportunities are what get students excited about being in the water workforce. We also have monthly meetings and we bring in experts. So if you're interested, we'd love to hear from all of you on different water topics, because there's so much variation in careers that you can do in water. And we want to expose students to all the different opportunities, because you never know what will spark them to a lifelong career in water. And another effort that we're working on is equitable access to information. We all know that water is a critical issue to all of us, but not everybody has access to that information. The majority of the water education information is only available in English, and we have 22% of Colorado residents who are Spanish speaking or who are Hispanic. So there is a big opportunity right now to change that. And all of you can be a part of that as well. Because when we have the community meetings, when we have the conversations to really have the community be active participants, we need to make sure that everybody can participate. So here are some interpretation and translation services. One of the common things that I hear is that, well, Jessica, we don't have someone who can do a presentation in Spanish. And you don't have to, because there are people who will do live interpretation for you. Before I got into this line of work, specifically in language justice and equitable access to information, I thought that whenever you had a translator, you would have someone standing next to me and I would say hello and they would say bienvenidos. And then the whole presentation would be double the length. But that's not the way it works. They use iPods. That's not an iPod. That's what always comes to mind. It's like a little listening device and with a channel, and there's someone doing simultaneous interpretation. They are talking as I am talking and translating it for those who need to hear it in a different language. So translation is the translation of written content. So like my slides, for example. Interpretation is having that auditory translation of simultaneous. And this can be done virtually. It can also be done in person. They are truly remarkable to work with, to have that skill set of being able to think and speak in multiple languages simultaneously. It's truly amazing. I work with the Community Language Cooperative. Their website is here, and they have all of the equipment, and they charge a very reasonable rate of $75 an hour. So I highly encourage you all to check them out and to try to integrate that into the work that you're doing. So with our Language Justice Initiative, we're looking to translate existing educational materials, offer bilingual classes in English and Spanish. We're going to be working on creating a Spanish resources page. And then really the change of mindset is thinking about any new content that we create needs to be in multiple languages, because if you start with just continuing on doing English only, then you have to get funding. You know, a lot of us need funding to do that translation because there is a cost. And so then that stops the forward momentum of making sure that your materials are equitable and in multiple languages. Inclusion, thinking about including and making other perspectives, ideas, identities, backgrounds welcome in these conversations. And by having the ability for people to participate in the language of their heart, they feel more welcome in those spaces. So when we're thinking about our path forward, we really need to reframe our outlook, reframe our mindsets, and think about the language that we're using, because language is powerful. So a reframe, an example of a reframe is from Spanish materials are not being used. And that leads to the assumption that people who speak Spanish don't care about the content or are just not interested. The reframe of that is we are not adequately reaching Spanish speakers. And so thinking of it from, instead of, well, it's their problem, they're not interested, to it is our problem and responsibility to better reach them. Also look in your own companies and examine existing diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. What's working well? What can be improved? And are there opportunities to increase staff knowledge on DEI practices? There's a lot of tremendous trainings out there to increase your own understanding of ways to be more inclusive and thoughtful in working with community members. Also ensuring diverse representation in the room. Who's in the room? Who should be in the room? And I've heard other panelists speak to this too, but also thinking to bring in different backgrounds as well. Because with having that diverse background, we can get more robust solutions. And then finally, this sort of work is uncomfortable. We need to lean into that discomfort. It's uncomfortable to say we haven't been doing it as the best that we could. It's uncomfortable to say we've been leaving out people from this discussion. But sitting and leaning into the edge of that discomfort is where we learn and improve. I think about my kids and how I don't want them to be comfortable their whole lives. I want them to be uncomfortable because that comes from new experiences and new learning opportunities. So as we move forward, the path towards diversity, equity, and inclusion is really to keep learning, to listen and be authentic with people. People know when you're being authentic, to truly care and listen to understand, to work with community connectors. The Environmental Justice Task Force had a recommendation of working with those community connectors. A lot of municipalities and governmental groups ask me, how do we reach these diverse communities? And it's by connecting with people who are already trusted and work in those communities. Have a community-led identification of issues. In the past, a lot of times we go into a community and say, this is your problem, instead of asking them, What are your problems? And how can we help? Remove as many barriers to engagement as possible. Have in-person, virtual, just like we are here tonight. Childcare for those of us who bring our child to meetings. Have food and incentives for people to participate. The community has valuable knowledge as well. How can we show them that we value their knowledge and their insights into the communities that they've been a part of? You will make mistakes. We all do. Just learn from them and continue to improve. Because I'm an educator, I have a robust resources page. I love all of these recommendations because a lot of people ask me, well, where do I start? And start from where the people who have been put in time and talked with the community have made these recommendations and ways for us to move forward. And finally, here are some ways to engage. Be an advocate and an ally for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and bringing in those diverse perspectives. Examine how you can incorporate language justice or equitable access to information into your work, your organization. Keep learning. I put a QR code here because it's for the children. So I have shamelessly put up there our fund to sponsor the Water Fellows program. I'm currently applying for a grant to spread this program across Colorado to have more and more opportunities for students from all across the different regions to have access to water professionals and get excited about the water careers. Share your water experience with our students. Please reach out to me if you're interested in connecting with our students in serving as we're looking for internships, by the way, for this summer. That's also a new part of the program. We really want to connect students to real world applied work in water. And then you can also, that's my last point, you can also, again, host an intern. And here's my contact information. I look forward to hearing from all of you and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. All right, Bill's got a question.
Is the primary source of your funding universities related, or are there other specific sources, or are you constantly making an effort to get more grants?
I will take any funding. We have a diverse set of funding streams. We do get support from the university, which we're very grateful for, but we also have opportunities to search for grants and partnerships with different types of organizations. So Colorado Water Conservation Board is the grant that I'm going after for expanding the Water Fellows program, but I've also done partnerships with municipalities and nonprofits, different organizations who are interested in supporting the work and expanding it. And also, I will be looking for specific organizations to partner as we move regionally, because I think they can offer that really hands-on support to those local Water Fellows.
Thank you. Other clarifying questions for Jessica before we move on to our final, very brief portion before Q&A. Commissioner Cavallis has a question.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Jessica. I believe in your presentation you referenced CSU SPUR. Can you say a little bit more about CSU SPUR?
I would love to. Oh, Karen's going to do that in the next slide. But I will say
No
that
stealing thunder.
the buildings are amazing. They have been a lot of years of effort and cooperation that have brought those buildings together, and they're a tremendous opportunity and learning space, and we look forward to engaging with them and partnering with them more and more. Thank you.
All right. I think we're going, Jessica, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so Karen is going to wrap us up, and I'm not sure if Lori's joining her or not. Karen is going to wrap us up with some opportunities for you all to engage coming up.
Yeah, just we wanted to end on kind of, leave you with some ways to engage going forward. You've heard some already, but just to outline them specifically in some slides here. So go to our website. We have most of our opportunities available on the website. We've got a QR code there. One thing I wanted to mention was our graduate seminar on interdisciplinary water resources. We hold that every fall. This semester's course is just wrapping up. You missed that one, but it was on the South Platte River Basin. We focus on different themes every year. And so it will be something different next year, but it is free and open to the public, either in person or online. So those are broadcast every Tuesday. That might be Monday next fall, but they're currently every Tuesday, 4 to 5. And they, similar to this series, we bring in invited speakers and just cover all the range of different aspects of water. So for the South Platte River Basin, we had presentations on agriculture, water conservation, environmental justice, and all of these different aspects, administration, water law. So I highly encourage you to keep tabs on that and look for our next theme for next year. We've already mentioned water literate leaders, but this is an opportunity for more in-depth education on water specific to Northern Colorado. They are monthly in-person meetings from September to May. They include field trips. This one was from last year to the Chimney Hollow Reservoir with Northern Water, and we actually just did this tour on Tuesday. Thank you, Jeff. And I'm happy to say it was much better weather than they had last year. They were freezing. But anyway, so really fun program where we again cover the range of topics, aspects of water in our region, and really get to engage with water leaders. So we bring in different speakers, we focus on leadership, we do some skill development as well, and it's a great opportunity to build your network in water. And then finally, we have CSU Spur Hydro in Denver. So there are 3 buildings that make up the CSU Spur campus, and that's at the, what is the name? The National Western Complex. Okay, where they hold the stock show. Okay. I'm still kind of new to the area, so I'm wrapping my head around. But anyway, so they have 3 different buildings. Hydro is, of course, focused all on water. So it has educational displays, a lot of different pre-K through 12 opportunities for students to come and take a tour, engage on water. They're really amping that up too. I just heard today that they're going to hire a water science education coordinator that's going to be, building in kind of the hands-on experiences for students and the public. They also have bio blitzes. They have, you can go walk out the back area and go right to the South Platte River. It's right on the South Platte, which is really cool. And a lot of really neat opportunities coming out of Spur Hydro. They also have 2 other buildings. So Terra is focused on kind of the food and agricultural aspects, and then Vita is focused on kind of animal husbandry and that side of and medical sciences as well, I believe. And then just a few more resources here. So on our website, we currently have Colorado Water Knowledge, which we might be migrating to Water Education Colorado actually, but for now it's on our website. And I just want to put up Colorado Water Education Colorado's Citizens Guides. If you are not aware of these are a fantastic resource, and it's free online. So you can get them, pay for them in print and have them, but they're free online. They're available anytime. There's the link there, but if you just Google Water Education Colorado Citizen Guides, you can find them, and they cover many different topics. Anything you wanted to know about water, they provide an unbiased and very in-depth look at those topics. So that is what I have. And then I did have a slide for Larimer County, which I believe Lori was going to talk about, but perhaps she is not aware of that.
I have a trust that Lori knows everything about this. Oh,
Do you want to come up?
Danielle, come on up. Yeah.
This is tied to the participation in the Water Master Plan that we're still engaged in.
So I'll repeat that for those listening online. This is tied to our Water Master Plan engagement program.
I also, what was kind of mentioned from Laura at the beginning is we are working on a water master plan here at Larimer County. I think we've kind of covered, what is the role of the county kind of when it comes to water, and these water education series is a great example of that. Maybe it's convening and talking and educating. So with that, we have a massive public engagement kind of campaign that we're doing. I'll say that the project started in late July of this year, and we convened some of our groups in October. And then in November, what was mentioned, we had our kind of first kickoff vision and goals workshop with the public. So now we're moving on from there, and I will admit we are kind of entering a lull due to the holiday season and everyone's schedules. But we do have some engagement opportunities. On the first one, you'll see we have a questionnaire. Kind of where I was sitting, I have some QR codes that directly link you there, but it's one of the first things on the web page. So if you use the QR code or go to the website right below, one of the very first things says, please take our questionnaire. And so we are asking all community members and the public to take it and speak your values about water. Write some things down if you'd like. We're reading through them. Some are multiple choice, some are open-ended. So I just really encourage kind of a virtual participation through the questionnaire. In January, and come the new year, we will kind of be kicking off again with some actual opportunities. So the first one is the Water Advisory Group, which was mentioned. On January 10th from 3:30 to 5, we will have a virtual meeting that the public is invited to participate in. I should say to tune in. Due to, trying to manage a lot of voices, we are just having kind of the participation amongst the WAG members, Water Advisory Group, and then any member from the public can tune in. And the Zoom link will be posted closer to the dates on that same website. As we move kind of into the new year, there's going to be 3 more opportunities for public engagement events. We have an open house planned in April, and that's going to cover kind of preliminary results from the risk analysis as well as data gaps and information gaps that we're looking for. In July will be a workshop of some of the mitigation strategies that were identified, working with the public. Do these make sense? Which ones are actually attainable? Which ones kind of make sense for the community? So that's a workshop with your help your feedback to kind of change the results, so to speak. And then, or let's say fine tune the results. I like that better. And then in October, we have an open house, October-November timeframe of the draft plan. So when that's kind of finished, please come on by to this open house. It's all the way next year. And so we could talk through what the plan is. And then lastly, just sign up. All LC Water Plan at co.larimer.co.us. Sign up, send us an email. I'll get back to you. I'll put you on the contact list. And then I will send you emails along the way so you didn't have to write them all down tonight. So that's kind of what we have going for Larimer County moving forward, and kind of adding on to the water education series. We would really like to continue this engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. And thank you, Karen. Appreciate your guys' opportunities to engage more. I'm going to have my panelists come back up and find your name tag. I'm going to find my other mic too. Here she is. And I have Julie, my little mic runner, coming up to help me. So, we'll be handing the mics around again. Don't forget that you need to speak into the mic. Also, for my panelists, don't forget to turn your mic on. So, see that little red ring? When you hit the button, it should turn green, and then you can speak. But we recommend that you don't hit it until it's your turn to speak. That way they don't interfere with each other. All right. I know you guys are all eager and have lots of questions. So who has a question? Right here. Go ahead.
I don't know if this is a valid question, but at local level here in Fort Collins, where does it stand to keep Thornton's water in the river going through the city? Does anybody know?
I think that either Lori, do you want to take that? But we had a Fort Collins utility person at our last session. But Lori, do you feel like you want to answer that?
Well, I don't think it would be proper for me to speak to it, other than there is an application that the city of Thornton is filing with Larimer County It may have come in today. If it didn't come in today, it's coming in early next week. And the Board of County Commissioners will be hearing their request to build a pipeline to take the water out of the area according to their process.
Good question. Thank you, Lori. Bill. Awesome.
For Jessica, finally, after years of neglect on the Colorado River Basin, tribal water rights are finally getting the right kind of attention, albeit perhaps slow. I've heard that there are some infrastructure projects that are being undertaken, and it occurred to me that your effort to find students that would be interested in that area might have some success in that arena, perhaps even funding, and Jeff and others would know more about this, but the funding even from the tribes or from Colorado Water Conservation Board or others. But have you explored that possibility since that is now finally coming to some kind of fruition?
We definitely want to engage with the tribal community, but also don't want to step in where we're not needed. And so we're looking to continually strengthen relationships, build those relationships, and then see how we can work together. One of the things that we're thinking of doing, had a conversation with Ernest House last week with education, water education, starting there. And also the Water Fellows program, we're looking to partner with Fort Lewis and the Four Corners Water Center, and there's a lot of tribal students who go to that college. And so I see a lot of opportunities there as well. So I'm looking forward to what happens in the coming years. But definitely excited and looking forward to continuing to build those relationships so that we can have very successful partnerships moving forward.
Thank you.
Yes, related to the last question for Jessica as well. Do you see any Colorado-specific challenges for diversity, equity, and inclusion? I know you included the 4 pillars, and that was looked more like a national level look at water equity. Are there any of those that really stand out for you in Colorado?
Thank you. I'm currently crafting a water equity survey across Colorado to see where we stand as a state with the programs that we're offering and the initiatives that are being done in communities, mainly focusing on municipalities for this. And we got funding to do the survey and also do interview questions, because that is the question. Where are we now? What are the barriers to increase this type of work? And then where are the gaps, and how can we help bridge those gaps through partnerships? But what I have seen in working in the water industry is a real need to diversify in conferences, the perspectives that we're hearing, to bring in other voices, because a lot of times we see some of the same people presenting at conferences. And so we need to be able to elevate the issues that are from the community, like the mobile home park issue currently has a lot of people don't know about that issue, and so that's a real problem that's happening right now, and we need to come together and have a better understanding of those issues, and then making sure that our rooms, our boardrooms, our commissions have a diverse representation. I also am on the Hispanic Conservation Leadership Council with ECHO, Hispanics enjoying camping, hunting, and the outdoors. And one of their big initiatives, and also I've heard from the tribal engagement of the same issue of being on boards and commissions, having representation. The Colorado Water Conservation Board, Lorelei Cloud, is now serving as the first tribal member on the Colorado Water Conservation Board, and I would love to see more tribal engagement, more BIPOC individuals, more people of color serving in those roles to get those diverse perspectives as well. And additionally, language justice is a really big issue across the state, not just in Colorado, but Colorado specifically. I think there's a lot that we can do there to really bring water education, water information, rebates. So, for example, rebates and grant programs, a lot of times those are only in English, and people therefore don't have access to the information about how they can get involved, how they can benefit from these programs. So I think starting and examining our own internal structures and how we're reaching the community is a great place to start.
Thank you. Other questions? Oh, Commissioner Kafales.
I'll do one at a time. Again, thank you all very much, and a lot of thanks to the Colorado Water Center for working with us to to convene these sessions. I'm wondering how our regional efforts align with the Colorado Water Plan. I suspect that's a question for Karen.
Yeah,
Maybe that's too broad.
I think they align well. There is a bit of mention in the Colorado Water Plan about the Sonoran Institute's Growing Water Smart program, which essentially is a workshop opportunity for communities across the state of Colorado to learn how to do better integrated land use planning and water planning. And what I see Larimer County doing is essentially what participants of the Growing Water Smart program are doing. And so, I encourage Larimer County to continue to look at those resources that Sonoran Institute has, and potentially participate in that program as well. But that is a big aspect of the Colorado Water Plan, and I think Larimer County appears to be, going that way. And then some of these other kind of conversations that we've heard, including the NOCO Water Alliance, where you're getting some regional coordination, that is of utmost importance, and trying to bring in those different perspectives to engage in these difficult conversations and not be in our silos. And then, of course, diversity, equity, and inclusion is also mentioned. So I think we're on the right track. I think we're perhaps maybe even a model for the Colorado Water Plan. But I'd be interested to hear others' thoughts on that.
I was just going to add, for the first time, equity was a part of the Colorado Water Plan. And the Water Equity Task Force was a year-long task force that was put in place in 2021. And a lot of the recommendations one of the recommendations was around language justice. And so additionally to those two pieces, we are conveners at the Colorado Water Center. And so we are bringing together people who need to be in the room to have these conversations, to collaborate, and to have those opportunities to stop recreating the wheel. How can we to really amplify the work that we're doing, the good work that there's happening in other parts of the state, and model those here through those regional efforts.
Thank you. I was just going to add that part of the work that the NOCO Alliance has been doing does include this gap in land planning in some of the water districts. So land planning works when it's the city of Fort Collins that's delivering the water and developing their land planning. They can do that together. But in many of our water districts or water providers in our area and in Weld County, they're separate entities. And so some of the districts have stated loudly and repeatedly that there's a need for us to do better land planning as they attach to the water districts. So that conversation has started here.
And I just want to echo that. The water districts are water providers. They're not land planning. And so yet those districts overlap into cities. And as cities annex areas into those water districts, then it becomes problematic for them because they have to provide the water for those developments without having had any conversations, in essence. So with the cities. So it's become very important for what we're doing with this Northern Colorado Water Alliance is to start those conversations, and I think those conversations have started to really gain traction, and some of those conversations are now becoming a lot friendlier than they used to be, shall we say.
May I ask my second question? Thank you. So I appreciate the panelists talking about, I greatly appreciate the integration of water and land use planning, because I think that was one of the initial objectives of the water master planning process. So thank you for those comments. And it's a good segue to my second question, and that is I suspect we can all agree that there is a nexus between water supply and the cost of housing. I think if you're lucky, a water tap fee might be $50,000 or $60,000, depending on where you live. I was going to ask, how do we solve that problem? But that's probably not a fair question. But I wonder, maybe it's more fairer, if folks care to comment on that correlation, that nexus, because that's a fundamental issue that we're all dealing with. Housing is a big issue for folks, and one of the biggest cost drivers for the housing is the cost of water. Any thoughts on that, or any insights to help us move forward? Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, maybe I'll just start and say that the Colorado Water Center is very aware of this issue, and we're just hearing it in all conversations that we're having. Almost every single session of our water literate leaders, we're talking about this issue, and it is an issue not just for the Front Range communities; it's across the state. Although maybe the most significant in Front Range communities, but it has implications for equity. It has implications for who can live here and who cannot. And so we are currently trying to elevate this issue to different levels and get the conversation at a statewide level because it is very serious and we need to know what can be done. We don't have any solutions at this point, although I'm very excited to hear that this is something that NOCO is starting to discuss, that Water Alliance. So
I was going to share the work that the city of Fort Collins is doing. And so one of the challenges in this space that I've heard attending the NOCO Alliance meetings and listening to the water providers is that the water providers bought water rights decades ago, sometimes a century ago, for X number of dollars. And as portfolios go and new houses go into those districts, they require an investment to secure those water rights going forward. And what's happened now is that the cost of that new water, the market rate, is so high that it gets passed on to the homeowner, as Commissioner Kafalis so rightly identified. So what the city of Fort Collins is doing now is, rather than passing that cost along to the homeowner, as they have traditionally done, they're doing a year-long community engagement process where the community and the council will get to determine which value is higher, right? Is the value of being able to support affordable housing in our community higher now than having market rates to recover the utility infrastructure when we know reasonably we're going to have that water because of our senior rights attached to the water? And so I think that that's going to be leading the way for some changes in how the cost of housing and the cost of the water coming to the homes is looked at. Some of the other providers are talking about having tiered rates. So if you want to have a large home, great, but you're going to pay a lot more money to secure that water than if you want to have a tiny home or a smaller home. And so I think all of those are very positive discussions, because we're not doing ourselves any favor for housing affordability if a 900 square foot home has to pay $26,000 for water or $60,000 for water, and a 3,000 square foot home has to pay the same because the builders are going to build the 3,000 square foot home and not the tiny home. And so I do think, I agree completely with the former mayor that the conversations have become way more robust in the last 6 or 7 months that I've been on the alliance. Not because of me, but just, I thought right after I said that, I didn't want it to sound like that, but because of I think the emphasis in the community about how important this issue is helping the group come together with a common cause. Go ahead, Cecil.
And I think that going along with that, they're taking a look at just different tiers of rates, but they're also looking at different tap sizes. As a tiny home doesn't need the same size of tap as a 3,000 square foot home, and so they really are evaluating that. As a matter of fact, that's been one of the major topics of discussion, and each city is trying to now provide what they are doing so that every other entity can take a look at that. So all of that data is starting to be compiled.
See a question
I also
back
just
here.
wanted to add
Go ahead.
briefly,
I'm sorry, Jessica.
is that when we look at affordability in houses, something else to consider is the type of landscape that we're putting in, because as the water rates continue to go up, if we keep putting turf in, we're going to price people out of being able to afford to water that turf. So it's a complex issue, and now there's there's a turf replacement program, but I think we're also looking at banning turf going into commercial spaces as well. But it's something to keep in mind and just consider that how we are setting people up for future success or not in the way that we're building.
Thank you. Go ahead.
This is just to add on to the conversation around affordable housing and the cost of water. But I guess I'm wondering how you tie in communities. Some communities have the mindset of growth pays its way. And so, of course, water is more expensive today. We have, the cost of CBT water. We have the cost of storage. So is growth going to pay for that higher cost? And so some communities feel that growth should pay that way. So I guess, how do you balance the high cost with the belief that growth is paying?
Good question. Everybody don't answer all at one time.
One of the conversations is tied to what the city of Fort Collins is looking at now, which is more important, because they have had a philosophy there for decades that growth will pay its own way. That's why their rates were set at the market, because that is what new development should pay. But now what they're faced with is 53% of their workforce lives outside of the city of Fort Collins. So now the transportation networks are clogged. Now the air quality is worse. So they're having this fundamental discussion: what value is more important now that we are growing to our growth management boundary? And so if you're interested in that, I'd really encourage you to take a look at their website and get involved in that process, because I think it's going to be a fascinating discussion about how they begin to look at values differently. I've been in local government for too long in Wyoming and in Colorado, and all my communities I've lived in have been growth communities, and they've all had the same philosophy: growth pays its own way. And within a decade, all of them had a housing crisis. And it's attributed to the high cost of the value of homes and the low supply. You just cannot keep up with it when you are doing an oil and gas boom, for example, or here an economic boom. And so it's very interesting policy discussion, I think, and long overdue.
Go ahead.
One of the, and that's a problem, right? That because a lot of the water providers, they can't operate at a loss. cities have set up their water provider as an enterprise, which means that they can't operate at a loss. I think there's discussions to be had, and they're taking place. But there's got to be that protection. Somehow somebody's got to pay for it, right? So that's, I think, where the discussion is, and those are the discussions that are taking place. How do we pay for the water, and yet and then have without having such a significant impact on affordable housing? So it's a challenging conversation, quite frankly.
Claire, go
I
ahead.
was just going to add a quick note to that about growth paying the way of the water. And one of the examples that's come up in the Northern Colorado Water Alliance is, well, the developer might be able to buy the water right and secure that and ensure that the water's going to be there. The community and where the homes are being built don't have the delivery system set up yet, the water treatment facility set up. And so there's this mixed match. Like, yeah, sure, we can have development, but the water's not going to get to them. It's not going to get treated. And so there have been pauses to, housing permits because the technology and the funding has to catch up.
All right, Jeff has a question in the back.
Well, and it kind of dovetails on that. But first of all, thank you to Larimer County and Michelle and county commissioners for hosting this series. It's been very positive. Question on actually to that point of folks in surrounding communities, and I guess this is for Claire and Cecil. Have there been, and this is terrible as a journalist ask a yes/no question, but can you talk about the discussions perhaps among the leaders in the room talking about the regulatory friction between different rules and different parameters between Larimer County, Weld County, Fort Collins, Windsor, Severance, Timnath? Does that come up, and where do we go from here?
Oh, you give me the tough questions. Yes, and those discussions are a lot of these discussions are in their infancy stages, right? And I think one of the things that I think the more focused conversations have been between the water districts and the cities, because that's where the water districts have no planning capacity, right? All they are is the provider. If Fort Collins or Loveland or Timnath, any one of these communities plans this development, and they're in that water district will provide the water. Does that make sense? So the water districts have made some serious comments about how can we be brought into that planning process so that we are able to provide the water in a manner that is efficient and so on. So those discussions are taking place, and I think there's been some illumination around that particular topic as we've progressed here, quite frankly.
Okay, does anyone else have a question about you? Go ahead. She was pointing up here. I wasn't sure which one.
I just didn't want John to get away without a question here. So the question I have is, in Larimer County, we've kind of got this history of pretty large floods with a lot of damages associated with them. During a lot of those floods, houses that weren't in the floodplain or properties that weren't in the floodplain sustained a majority or a large portion of that damage. Can you address that challenge for floodplain management, and maybe where you would like to see floodplain management go in the future?
Geez, Travis. Here, I thought I was going to escape this without having to answer any tough questions. But no, thanks for the question. So it's true. And I think it happens probably in every community that big floods come and we get surprises. We get areas flooded that were never mapped in floodplains. And sometimes the explanation for that is just, well, this flood was a lot bigger than the floodplain mapping accommodated. So, for instance, I remember the 97 flood, Spring Creek flood, was way bigger than anybody had anticipated when delineating the city's Spring Creek floodplain. And sometimes it's other stuff, like, for instance, rivers change. Rivers change their course over time. And floodplain maps don't change nearly as quickly as rivers do. So, for instance, there's a lot of areas in up in the Big Thompson Canyon, for instance, where the last effective floodplain maps had been created back in the 80s, early 80s. And if you were to look at, if you went the day before the 2013 floods, if you went and looked at how the river compared, how the river fell within the floodplain maps, there are a lot of places where the river was already outside the floodplain limits. Things change. It's a dynamic system represented with static maps. And so now, where would I like to see changes in that regard? I got to be careful what I say, because a lot of the best ideas are also not very popular ideas. like for instance, there's a lot of people that have been talking about an erosion hazard flood boundary, and what that does is it says, well, we've got the floodplain that this is the floodplain if the river never changed, if there was no shifting of the channel alignment or whatever, or if big floods in the Big Thompson River didn't move 8-foot boulders, and so we've got the floodplain, but then outside of that, we need to also acknowledge that there are areas that if the river erodes right here, and what's next to that is a 100-foot high bluff, and that bluff is steep, and the river erodes the bottom of that bluff, well, now everything moves out. In fact, I believe the only fatalities in the 2013 flood in the Big Thompson River were 2 people who lived in a home that was up on a hillside outside of the floodplain, but erosion exposed their home to that risk, right? So using erosion hazard boundaries as part of floodplain management, that's something that is going to be politically difficult to achieve, but it's technically correct. So that's one aspect of how I would change things. I think that another aspect is just simply more modern and more modern floodplain mapping that leverages modern technology. And we're seeing that happening a lot here in Colorado. What's called the CHAMP project, Colorado Hazard Mapping Project, is that what it is? Funded by FEMA through the state, has gone through and used what's called LiDAR technology. That gives us the best possible terrain data. New LiDAR, better technology and hydraulic modeling that allows for better mapping processes. So just bringing new technology to all of the mapping, that helps as well. And even with all of that, what you described is still going to happen sometimes. We're going to get badly surprised by floods damaging properties that we didn't think were at risk. So I hope that that's a satisfactory answer.
Thank you, John. Good question, and what a fascinating diversity of expertise here tonight and questions you guys had. We're out of time, unfortunately. So with that, let's give one more round of applause to our panelists tonight. Very quickly before we end, again, thank you to the county commissioners, Commissioner Jody Shattuck-McNally, Commissioner Falls, Commissioner Stevens for hosting this series, along with our partners from the Colorado Water Center who really did all the work. They're the ones who know all the experts and were able to pull these panels together for us. So thank you guys. we've mentioned multiple times the ways you guys can continue to engage with the important work that Larimer County and the Colorado Water Center are continuing to do. So I encourage you all to continue doing that. And we do have a sign-in sheet. If you want to get more information and stay engaged with us, I encourage you guys to give us your email, and we won't send you too much spam, I promise. And hopefully we get to see you all sometime here soon in the future. Good night.
And thank you to Michelle.